Hi there, it's Lerald, and earlier today Blizzard dropped the surprise reveal of 4 of the new hero talent trees that are going to be in the War Within, and we're going to talk about that and take a deep dive on what I think is the coolest tree of this batch. So just to start off, this is a pleasant surprise. Christmas is nearly here, and this is usually a bit of a slow time for Blizzard. I feel like I got my gifts early with this. I think the timing of this reveal was great for 2 reasons. First off, Blizzard is making great progress with the next expansion. It seems like it's coming along nicely. Good. But second, Blizzard said at BlizzCon that they're committed to making WoW into a game that never has any more long dry spells. The days of late expansion dry spells are gone. The era when you could go a year or more with no new content. You know, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, even Legion and BFA. Nothing new to do for like forever, months and months and months at a time. That seems like it's going to be all in the past. And that's also good. The future seems a lot better than the past. I'm an optimist now. I think I'm getting laughed at from the other room, but right now I'm an optimist. So now let's talk about hero talents. Blizzard has composed a really detailed write-up on hero talents, what they are, how they work, and what their philosophy is. And it's pretty long, but here's the TLDR. Hero talents are the new form of player power in the War Within, the next WoW expansion. They are an evergreen system just like Dragonflight's talent revamp. You unlock them by leveling from 70 to 80. And they're basically subclasses that blend themes and utility from 2 of a class's specs. So we have this nice little diagram here. Protection Warrior and Fury Warrior, they can be Mountain Thane. Protection Warrior and Arms Warrior, they can be Colossus. Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior, they can be Slayer. So every spec has 2 subspecs that they can choose from, and those overlap with the other specs that your class has. So just to use the 4 examples that were previewed today, Fury Warrior and Prot Warrior get Mountain Thane, which gives them the ability to lean into more Avatar and Thunderclap utility and power. Holy Paladin and Protection Paladin get extra shielding and holy damage for their allies. As a Lightsmith, Blood and Unholy DK can deal extra damage and heal themselves as a Sand Lane. And Chrono Warden Evoker can turn their hover into a Mage's Blink, which is pretty cool and actually I think pretty useful. And then they also gain cooldown reduction and the ability, of course, to boost their allies' damage. So you get all of the talents in the hero talent tree. No more of like looking at a talent tree where you have maybe dozens or hundreds of talent options, and then all you can take is, you know, 35% of them. It's kind of nice to not be boxed out of any of the options that are available to you. There's also a ton of quality of life in this system. Blizzard has made a point not to let this turn into a million more keybinds either, and I have one quote from the article that I think is worth highlighting and actually reading out loud, and it's right here in this section, Gameplay and Hero Talents. One thing that we're keeping a close eye on is complexity. Classes in WoW have a lot of abilities and talents, and there's a lot to learn about each one. We want hero talents to add new fun without creating new burdens, either in customizing or playing a character. Most hero talent trees do not add new buttons that players will need to add to their action bar or find a new keybind for. There will be additional opportunities for players to express their skill, but we're not trying to add things like complex maintenance buffs that increase the cognitive load for everyone playing a class. Most of the choices a player will make about how complex they want their rotation to be will continue to be made in their class and spec talent trees. So I think with the exception of the Paladin tree that they've added, the Lightsmith Paladin, they've pretty much nailed this goal in everything that we've seen thus far. I'll do a deep dive on each of these trees soon, but with Paladin, that is the one exception here where you get an active skill and it's a ground targeted active skill. It's cool. It's kind of like Power Infusion with Twins of the Sun Priestess, where you're getting a buff for yourself and an ally, and that's nice to bring to a group. But it is another keybind, it is another thing to keep track of. So now let's look at the new warrior hero talent tree, and this is for Fury and Protection. It's the Mountain Thane. I'm mostly thinking about this from a protection angle since I mostly play protection, but I do really like Fury Warrior. I mean, I've been playing it since I first made a character. My first character was a Fury Warrior, and I definitely have a lot of love for it, even though definitely not my main spec or role. So the top talent in each tree is kind of the talent that sets the theme for the rest of the talents in the tree. The top one is sort of the theme setter, and then the bottom one is kind of the talent that ties everything, you know, back into that top talent. So let's just start with lightning strikes here at the top of the tree. Damaging enemies with Thunderclap, Revenge, Raging Blow, or Execute has a 10% chance to also strike one with a lightning bolt, dealing moderate nature damage. Now, we don't really know what that number is. It'll probably be something that scales off your attack power. That's pretty standard design. And now there is a bit of a quirky wording here. A 10% chance when damaging enemies with Thunderclap, Revenge, etc. Presumably this doesn't mean like if you drag 10 enemies together and hit them with a Thunderclap, that's 10% chances, so more or less 100% chance. Maybe it works like that, but probably not. It's probably a 10% chance every time you hit any of these skills. One real nice piece of utility that's being added in here, or I should say like love for a kind of underperforming skill for a long time for protection, is this Execute being part of this. Giving Execute a little bit more value than just the damage that it deals is something that Prot Warrior really needs right now. Its Execute is pretty weak. This has probably been one of the biggest weaknesses that's kind of gone unsung for Prot Warriors, uncomplained about by me, among other people. The Execute damage is really bad, and the design of Prot Warrior's Execute is really bad. You look at Blood DK, who is able to use an Execute that deals a ton more damage than Prot Warrior's Execute, and is actually sort of a resource generator since you spend runes on it and get runic power back. Not exactly, but it's not just a straight resource dump. You know, like if Soul Reaper cost the same amount of runic power as Death Strike and did no healing, it wouldn't get used. You look at Protection Paladin, they're actually able to get holy power back by hitting Hammer of Wrath. It's kind of absurd that Execute for Prot Warrior doesn't work like Execute for Fury Warrior, where it's a rage generator, but it has a cooldown. I think that would be a much better design, a much better concept for the way that Prot Warrior's Execute should work. So having at least some sort of a redeeming quality to it is nice. Obviously, that's something that can be begged for, probably to no avail, but still. So this is good, and then we see this sort of thematic concept here. Lightning strikes occur 50% more often during Avatar, so instead of a 10% chance, it becomes 15% chance, and it lets us know that Avatar is going to be kind of essential to everything that's going on here. Thunderclap and Avatar are going to be kind of the two themes for this whole tree. And as a Prot Warrior, those are kind of the two things you think about the most when you're playing a Prot Warrior in Mythic Plus. In any sort of AoE situation, you're really making a lot of use of Thunderclap, and you feel really strong when Avatar is active. So I like both of those themes. I think this seems like it's going to be a really strong setup for Mythic Plus and for AoE situations, and Raid potentially as well. PvP, I don't know. Now over here on the left-hand side, we have Call of Thunder, and looking at the protection talents, it says Storm Strike or nature damage, your ability steal is increased by 5%. So the lightning strikes are nature damage. We'll get to some other Storm Strike damage in a bit, and Thunderclap damage is increased by 50%. For Fury, it's the same thing. Storm Strike damage ignores armor, so it's spell damage essentially. Thunderclap damage increased by 50%, and it generates 5 rage. So what this does is it makes Thunderclap become a rage generator for Fury. Basically, it does what I hope they will do with Execute for Prot, making it like Fury's Execute. It's doing it in the opposite direction. It's making Fury's Thunderclap become Prot's Thunderclap, where it's a rage generator. It deals a lot of damage. It's pretty useful in AoE, and it essentially allows you to replace Whirlwind with Thunderclap. I think if I'm reading this correctly, improve Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver now improve Thunderclap as well as Whirlwind. So my thinking is that instead of pressing Whirlwind to get Meat Cleaver to get your AoE, your cleave ability, your cleave buff stacks, you're able to hit Thunderclap, which is on a 5-ish second cooldown with haste, and get those Meat Cleaver stacks that way. I think that's probably going to wind up just being for Fury, where you would replace Whirlwind in most situations with Thunderclap if you're playing a Mountain Thane, and then you're not getting any more keybind bloat, and you're getting more damage and more utility out of it. Ground Current, lightning strikes also deal a little bit of AoE damage. Not really a lot to say here. You get a little bit of AoE damage to go with doing AoE damage and then getting a proc out of it. Great. Strength of Mountain. Shield Slam damage increased by 20%, Bloodthirst and Rampage damage increased by 10%. Totally not complex at all, and awesome. I mean, we love this. We love to see more single target damage. Who could complain about that at all? This is kind of proof that things don't need to be complicated in order to be good. Sometimes something that's really simple rules. Thunder Blast. Shield Slam and Bloodthirst have a 20% chance to grant you Thunder Blast, stacking up to 2 charges. That 2 charge stacking is very nice. We love when a buff has some sort of built-in, like, you know, good luck protection, essentially. You don't want to be munching on charges. It's nice to be able to hold a charge for when you need to do a little bit of extra burst. And Thunder Blast just makes it so that your next Thunderclap becomes a Thunder Blast that deals Storm Strikes damage. So instead of dealing physical damage and being mitigated by armor, it deals Storm Strike, so it's spell damage, so it benefits from like Demon Hunter spell damage buff. It ignores armor, so it does a little bit more damage, does 5% more damage thanks to Call of Thunder. All that's pretty good. Storm Shield and Storm Bolts is your first choice node, and this is something that they put into the hero talent trees. There aren't a ton of them, but, you know, they're okay. They seem to mostly be oriented around utility. You can use this form of utility or that form of utility, and this is probably a perfect example to start with. Storm Shield makes it so that you can intervene a target and give them a pretty massive magic damage absorb. 3 times your armor is... You know, it'll depend on gear levels and all, but like, even if that's 10 or 20% of their health, intervening somebody and giving them a pretty sizable amount of magic damage shielding is not bad. Now, this does incentivize using Intervene, which has basically been dropped from talent trees for, yeah, I mean, just to pick up other talents, essentially. And it's kind of a bit of a utility that I've really missed. I really have always liked being able to have a mouse over Intervene macro, and I see somewhere that I need to get, and there's another player nearby, I can intervene to them, and then walk the rest of the way. Kind of feel like I've lost that part of Warrior's identity, so being able to get this back and then justify it by saying, oh, well, I'm keeping people alive with my awesome Storm Shield, that's really appealing to me. But also appealing is this Stormbolt talent that makes it so your Stormbolt not only hits the primary target, but also will cleave and gives you some extra stunning. I could see this being really valuable in PvP as well. Both of these, frankly, seem really valuable in PvP, but also in Mythic Plus, the ability to multi-target stun in Mythic Plus. Potentially this could be bad, right? You're DRing stuff, but the potential to stun multiple things that you do want to stun at once is pretty good. Then we have Flashing Skies and Valor Jar Training, another choice node here, and this one is just throughput oriented, and this is the kind of thing that you basically just have to sim out and figure out like what is better. But Flashing Skies, first off, gives you a chance for lightning strikes to critically strike is increased by 5%, and the critical strike damage is increased by 10%. And again, lightning strikes is this proc up top, the proc that occurs when you hit with Thunderclap, Revenge, Raging Blow, or Execute. So this is just sort of when you do damage and then you proc some extra damage, the extra damage is even more extra. I mean, great, not really all that complicated. Valor Jar Training, on the other hand, gives you cooldown reduction when those lightning strikes proc, and it applies to Ravager. So this gives you a sort of a talent incentive, and it's kind of demonstrating what your talent layout is going to look like, whether you're playing Fury or Prot. If you're playing a Mountain Thane, you're going to be taking Thunderclap, you're going to be taking Avatar, you're probably going to be taking Ravager, and getting cooldown reduction on a pretty nice source of AoE damage and a really nice source of rage generation in AoE is awesome. I mean, this is the thing that I love about Warrior. I think most people who love Warrior, even in spite of it being bad at times, the thing that they love most is the cooldown reduction. That's the iconic aspect of the class. So leaning further into that is a really good idea. Leaning into cooldown reduction, procs, and ability resets is what Warrior is all about. And I think they're nailing it thus far. So now we come over here to the left side again, and we have another utility choice node. You can take Steadfast as the peaks. Victory Rush increases your maximum health by 10% for 5 seconds. This seems undertuned. This could maybe be good in some Mythic Plus situation. It is nice. You hit Victory Rush when you need healing, right? That's when you hit it. You need healing, you press the healing button, and now you get 10% more max health. That's pretty good, but 5 seconds is really short. If this was like 15 seconds, maybe there's something to it, but then again, maybe there's some sort of issue with doing that where now it becomes like a maintenance buff and you feel like you have to hit Victory Rush on cooldown in Mythic Plus or something. Maybe if this had some other effect like Victory Rush also shields you for a large amount, but then there might be issues with that in PvP. The alternative is keep your feet on the ground. Thunder Blast reduces all damage you take by 4% for 5 seconds. Again, Thunder Blast is the talent right above it. Shield Slam and Bloodthirst have a 20% chance to grant Thunder Blast. Thunder Blast just makes your next Thunderclap hit harder, deal spell damage, and they didn't say this in the article or in this talent tree, but they have said this in some interviews elsewhere that there are some like different spell effects. So presumably the Thunder Blast is going to look like just a super cool blast of lightning, I guess. Not really thunder. You can't see sound, and that's what thunder is. But, you know, cool looking, different new animation to go with this proc, which is pretty rad. So I would think realistically as a tank, you're basically always going to keep your feet on the ground. Steadfast as the Peaks in its current design sort of seems dead to me for most tanking situations, but I don't know. Gathering Clouds, your attacks trigger lightning strikes 15% more often. That's really good, and it interacts with all these other things that we really like Valor Jar Training and Ground Current and Burst of Power over here to the side. Thorum's Might, lightning strikes generate 3 rage, revenge, raging blow, and execute damage increased by 15%. That's just straight up more damage on your main rage dump as protection, your mage offensive rage dumps anyway, and then 2 of your better rage generators as Fury. That sounds pretty nice as well. And depending on how often you're actually generating or having these lightning strikes occur, that can add up to quite a bit of rage. So I think either of these could be pretty interesting. Obviously you would want to take both because they have such nice synergy with each other. Getting more rage when you lightning strike and getting more lightning strikes more often, like that would be nice to have both of these. But I think you can live with really either of these. I think they both seem pretty nice. In general, though, I think getting more procs more often seems more appealing for Mythic Plus in particular. Like, that consistency is really good. The cooldown reduction with Valor Jar Training is really good. The added AoE damage from Ground Current seems pretty nice as well. And then you have Burst of Power. Lightning Strikes have a 20% chance to make your next 2 Shield Slams or Bloodthirst have no cooldown. Incredible, incredible synergy between this and this. Burst of Power, Gathering Clouds, and Thunder Blast. So you hit a Lightning Strike, you get 2 Shield Slams with no cooldown, you Thunder Blast, or you hit 2 Shield Slams in a row, you get a couple of Thunder Blast charges, then you're slamming a couple of Thunder Blasts out, now you're getting on some more Lightning Strikes. You have all of these different procs feeding into each other. They're adding tons of damage, they're adding tons of cooldown reduction, they're adding, I don't know, cool animations. And it's basically all passive. It doesn't really take a lot of extra brain power to sort all of this out. And finally, we cap all this off with Avatar of the Storm. Casting Avatar grants you 2 charges of Thunder Blast. Once again, Thunder Blast right over here. And it resets the cooldown of Thunderclap. We love ability or cooldown resets. That's great. So hit Avatar, immediately Thunderclap. That's awesome. That's really, really good for establishing threat early in a pull. You know, this idea now that you're going to be able to charge into a pull and hit Thunderclap and then Avatar and then Thunderclap again is fantastic. While Avatar is not active, Lightning Strikes have a 10% chance to grant Avatar for 4 seconds. Again, amazing. This ability to have even more cooldown uptime than you already have. Like right now, without any of these talents, Prot Warrior is very easily over 50% Avatar uptime. So with this kind of talent upgrade going on, obviously gear levels go down, so some of those uptimes go down at the very start of an expansion. But this stands to give you a really, really nice boost to all of your cooldown uptime. I mean, it gives you ability cooldown resets. It gives you just so much power added all into this talent tree. And what can you say? You love to see it. I really, really like the concept here. I think this looks pretty amazing for Mythic Plus thus far. It doesn't look bad for Raid either. I would like to see what the other talent tree winds up looking like. The Slayer tree is for Fury and Arms, so we're not going to see that for tanks, but that will be interesting. My guess would be that that would be a lot more execute oriented, but I guess we'll find out. The Colossus tree is the one that is in between arms and protection, and my hope and maybe expectation there is that we're going to see a lot more emphasis maybe on ignore pain, but more on bleeds. That is my thinking, is that we're going to see more of a bleed focus that's going to be somewhat along the lines of what we've seen with the current Protection Warrior tier set bonus, where you're generating bleeds and then consuming the bleeds, and that's giving you damage reduction and a lot of damage, and also cooldown reduction and cooldown resets, and that's all a cool concept. I think the problem with the way that it's been implemented in the current tier set for Prot Warriors is, if I had to point to a single issue, it's all built around single target stuff. It's all built around hitting Shield Slam to pop all the bleeds off. I like it. I think it works really well in a raid situation, in a single target situation, but in all-out AoE, it doesn't really work as well. And I think that this talent setup that we've seen with the Mountain Thane has this pretty nice flow back and forth between hitting Shield Slam and then using that to buff your Thunderclap, and then hitting Thunderclap and using that to give you Shield Slam resets. And that all flows really nicely into each other. You're kind of back and forth between all of your different skills in a way that seems pretty satisfying and pretty appealing, and isn't just leaning on one aspect of what the class does, hitting Shield Slam a bunch to do damage. So that's all pretty exciting. Alright, I think that pretty much covers it for the Mountain Thane. Thanks for watching. Bye.